Hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make some no knead Turkish bread. This is a sort of flat bread, a pita type bread. I think it's called pida or something in Turkey, and it is formed into the bread and then a pattern is formed on the top, and then it's covered with some sesame seeds and nigella seeds. Now I don't have nigella seeds. I think I threw them away because they were out of date. So I'm going to use sesame seeds and black sesame seeds. It's actually quite simple, but I make a quick starter to activate the yeast in some flour and a little bit of sugar and water. And then I add the remaining ingredients, which is simply more water, more flour and salt, and turn it into a shaggy dough, which I then leave to rise until it's doubled in size. And after that I tip it out onto a floured surface, divide it in two, and work it a little bit just to shape it, and then put it onto the baking trays and leave it to rise again. So actually very, very simple, but it takes a little bit of time. So I'll go on to the ingredients, and for the quick starter I have 112 grams, which is 3/4 of a cup of bread flour. I have 10 grams, which is 1.5 packets of instant yeast. I have 200 millilitres of lukewarm water, and I have 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of sugar. And the water is at about 40 degrees Celsius, which is about 105 Fahrenheit. And then for the main part of the dough, I have 200 millilitres of water, which is half a cup plus 1/3 of a cup. Again, that's lukewarm water. I have 390 grams, which is 2 1/3 cups minus 1 tablespoon of bread flour. And I should say that in both instances, when I give the measurements for cups for the flour, I'm referring to scooping packed flour into a 250 millilitre cup. I also have 6 grams, 1 teaspoon of salt. Then to go on the top, I have my sesame seeds, the normal white ones and the black ones. And I'm going to use a beaten egg with a little drop of water to brush over the top before I put the sesame seeds on. So the first thing we have to do is to get the yeast activated in the water and the flour. And so to do that, I'm going to put the flour and the yeast and the sugar into a large bowl, and then I'm going to pour my warm water on as well, and I'm going to mix that around until it's all nice and smooth. So that's nice and smooth, and I should say that if you have a couple of little lumps in it, it really isn't going to matter very much, because you're going to mix it again when you add the remaining flour and water in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover that with some plastic wrap. And I'm going to leave that to rest for 20 to 30 minutes, and it will start to froth and bubbles will form on the top. And once the bubbles have formed on the top, I'll be ready to go on to the next stage, which is to add the other ingredients. So I'll be back with you after about 30 minutes. So as you can see, my flour and water have activated in the yeast quite nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour in my other 200 millilitres of lukewarm water And I'm just going to stir that around and add the salt as well and stir that around. And then I'm going to add in the flour and I'm going to stir it around to form a shaggy dough, making sure that the liquid gets fully combined into all of the flour. And I should scrape down the sides of the bowl to make sure that all the flour gets incorporated. And that's good like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover that again with the plastic wrap, and I'm going to leave it in a warm place until it has at least doubled in size, and that should take about an hour. And then once it's doubled in size, I'll come back and we'll go on to divide the dough into two and shape it, and then leave it to rest before we put the egg wash and the sesame seeds on and bake it. So I'll be back once this has doubled in size. It's been almost an hour and my dough has more than doubled in size now. So I have floured my work surface quite heavily, because this is going to be a sticky dough. And what I'm going to do, as you can see, the dough has risen quite extensively. I'm going to tip that out onto the flour. And then I'm going to fold it over on itself a few times. And then I'm going to divide it in two as evenly as I can, but it doesn't really matter if it's not exactly divided. And then I'm going to take each piece in turn, and I'm going to, keeping my fingers floured, turn it over on itself, like that, and then just form it into a sort of oblong, really. And do the same with the second piece. And then I'm going to take each piece and I'm going to form it into a rectangle, like that. And I'm going to place that on a baking tray that I have lined with parchment paper. I'll just press it out again, like that. And I'll do the same with the second piece. So I have them roughly the same size and shape. They don't have to be exact, obviously. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover them again, and I'm going to leave them for 30 minutes, and during that time I'm going to preheat my oven to 250 degrees Celsius, 230 Celsius with a fan, 480 Fahrenheit, and I'll have a pan of water ready to go into the bottom of the oven as we start to bake. And then after 30 minutes I'll come back and we'll form the pattern on the top, we'll brush them with the egg wash and put the sesame seeds on, and then we'll bake them. So I'll be back with you in 30 minutes when we're ready to make our pattern. So it's been 30 minutes now, and the dough has been resting on the baking trays. So I have mixed my egg with a little bit of water, and I've actually used about a teaspoon of flour in the water as well, and I'm just going to brush that over the top of the dough. I'm not pressing down because I don't want to deflate the dough at this stage, but to get it all covered like that. It's quite liberally covered, and then I'm going to use my fingers and I'm going to press a pattern around the edge, like that, and then diagonally across, leaving a gap, like that, and then I'm going to do 2 straight lines along the length, like that, and the same with the other one, just like that. And the last thing to do before they go into the oven is to sprinkle them with sesame seeds and nigella seeds. Now, as I said, I don't have nigella seed, so I'm using 2 types of sesame seed, which will be perfectly fine. It tastes great because I've already been eating the ones that I made yesterday. So just sprinkle over, and how many you sprinkle is entirely up to you, of course. I'm not going to use as many black ones, it's just to give that extra little bit of colour as well as the flavour, but I think that's good enough for me. So I'm going to put those into the oven with the pan of boiling water on the bottom, and I'm going to bake them for 15 minutes. And after 15 minutes I take them out of the oven and put them onto a wire rack and leave them to cool a little bit, and then I'll come back and show you the results. I baked the easy no knead Turkish bread for 15 minutes, and I tested it with my thermometer, and the internal temperature was 96 degrees Celsius, which is coming up for, or I think slightly over 200, maybe about 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So I knew that it was cooked all the way through. So I took them out of the oven and put them on a wire rack, and I've let them cool down. They're still a little bit warm, but I've cut one in half and I'll show it to you now. So this is what it looks like, and it's baked up very nicely, as you can see, and it's lovely and soft if I squeeze it. So I've already been nibbling a piece, but I'll have a little taste again. The crust is soft but chewy, and the interior is lovely and soft. Has a wonderful flavour, and those sesame seeds give that lovely flavour. So it's very easy to make this recipe, and it doesn't actually take too long, and sort of no kneading is what sells it for me. It's ideal to be torn apart and dipped in soup, or a nice Turkish lamb stew or something like that, or a Turkish dish. Ideal with salad as well, and very good for sandwiches, or cut in half and sliced open, and filled with whatever you want, salad and meat and cheese and things like that. So this is very, very good indeed. And that's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well. And I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.